Good evening, Paul. This is YouTube Commenter, and what is with the screen crunch in the upper left corner of your footage? It looks terrible. Well, I didn't have too many options for capturing DS footage, so let me show you how difficult it really was. So now you see for yourself the kind of options that I was given for the Virtual Console on the Wii U, and if any of you have any better ideas, assuming Nintendo doesn't eventually bring DS games to the Switch, I would be very grateful to hear your opinion. So this is actually a re-review of me looking at the DS version of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragons and the Blade of Light, which was the first Fire Emblem game that came out in North America. However, I didn't really like the DS remake when I originally reviewed it, and I don't like it too much more this time. However, I wanted to re-review it for two reasons. The first is because I now have a capture card, and most of you seem to have the preference that I have my games with footage rather than just my face in front of the camera, so I decided to do that. And second, Nintendo announced that they're releasing what I like to call a D-make of Shadow Dragon, where they're bringing over the original Famicom version translated into English for the first time, even though this DS remake already exists. So, interesting decision aside, I'm gonna see how this game works so I can make an adequate comparison when I finally get around to playing the original version. So for starters, let's talk about the good, as there are definitely some bright spots in this experience. The DS remake, not that we Americans would know the difference, has 5 additional prologue chapters that you can play if you're playing on the lowest difficulty, which essentially give Marth a younger redesign and also tell the story of why he was exiled from his home kingdom and what caused him to go on his quest in the first place. These are actually the best parts of the game in my opinion. The problem is, one, there's only 5 of them, and two, because they're prologues, that means they're all going to be at the start of the experience. And so that means that the rest of the game is so dull and lacking in personality. Now, the gameplay itself is fine. It works just great, and a lot of it is carried over into future Fire Emblem titles to date. The addictive turn-based strategy and weapon triangle still feels great here. However, the problem is that the Fire Emblem games were known for their personality. The permadeath is essentially what defined the genre, but when a unit dies in this game, because there's no support conversations, there's not really a whole lot of conversations to begin with, you don't exactly feel like you lost a friend, you feel like you lost an asset, which in a sense makes this feel like any other war game where it's like, oh, okay, another nameless unit, well, whatever, I don't really care. So because there's no supports, and because there's no rescuing, and because you can only upgrade your weapons to an A, just to name a couple of things that they stripped down for this port, including pretty much everything Radiant Dawn improved upon, it just feels like the bare minimum of a Fire Emblem experience, and because of that, it essentially isn't a full Fire Emblem experience. So if you're a newcomer in the franchise and are wondering what's the hype with the series, this is definitely not the game you want unless you're really desperate for the gameplay without the bells and whistles that made even the GBA entries so addictive. It's essentially the same thing as playing chess with a computer opponent versus playing chess with a live person. And unless you're only in it for the gameplay, you don't really care about the story, you don't really care about character dialogue, you're just like, just give me the gameplay, then I would say this is serviceable. Now, in fairness, this is one of the harder Fire Emblem games. Even on the earliest difficulty, there is quite a lot of resetting and abusing the map saves and save points of the Virtual Console version that I had to use. However, I complained a lot about the map saves in my original review, but upon retrospecting, I actually think they're placed really well. I don't think they really obstruct the action as much as I made them out to. And I think If they couldn't have incorporated the battle saves from Radiant Dawn, I think this is a decent compromise, as it still allows you to save fairly whenever you want, and because this is a DS game, if you're playing the original version, you can just close the DS and play it later, or if you're on the Virtual Console, well, you can save anywhere. However, because of the lack of a rewind feature, which I heard that they're including in the upcoming port, that means that you have to be very careful where you save, as if you save, say, right before someone's about to die, that might actually be to your detriment. So, graphically, the game looks okay, even if most of the levels are pretty much the same. There's not really a whole lot of environmental variety. You're pretty much only going to get field and palace levels and nothing else. Musically, it's alright. It just doesn't go above and beyond. It sort of feels like this is the bare minimum of how to remix the original soundtrack, and the tunes themselves don't feel nearly as amazing and memorable as any other Fire Emblem game. Even the ones on the GBA sound better than this. If anything, it feels like this came before the Game Boy Advance games and sort of shows that the DS is an underpowered machine, which is certainly not the case. So, I want to reiterate my further points. I think that for people that are looking for challenging gameplay without much of a story, then you'll like this. However, if you're looking for an addictive Fire Emblem experience, you're better off with any other version on a Nintendo system. Even Fates is better than this. Now, I did carefully say Nintendo version because there's also Fire Emblem Heroes, which has even less personality than this one is. But that's also on an iPhone, so I don't really count that as being Nintendo. So with that, thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, things that I missed, please let me know down below. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and I really hope that the true version of Shadow Dragon that Nintendo's bringing over will have quite a few quality of life improvements to make it not feel like a 30-year-old game. Bye-bye.